Hey, it's Drybear. Continuing our series of covering the dungeons in Season 1, World of Warcraft Dragonflight. Today we're going to talk about the Nokhud Offensive, which is the Oneran Plains dungeon. It is one of the new dungeons in Dragonflight, and it is one of the 4 Dragonflight dungeons in the Season 1 Mythic Plus rotation. And this one's actually super fun if everyone knows how it works and you can keep pace with it. In fact, I've really enjoyed pushing the key level on this one specifically. Just because everything kind of works out and there's some really fun moments in it. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the whole dungeon, just find little snippets, things that you need to know, things to interrupt, things to look for, mechanics to really conquer, as I do see people asking questions about this one specifically in my streams and in YouTube comments. If you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. I'll see you there. So this is the only dungeon that we have right now, or just in general, that you can dragon ride in, which does give you a nice opportunity to experiment. You can go, there's 3 bosses out in the open here, and then there's a final boss that you clear in order to complete the dungeon. There are different routes. Some people like going, I've actually started to look at some of the routes for the Season 1 dungeons, as I'll be leveling up and gearing out my tanks soon. But just this one specifically has a lot of experimentation on which way to go first. It depends on how you use your bloodlust. Some people like going for the Tempest first, the big wind elemental, just because you need bloodlust to clear that one on high keys, especially on tyrannical. It gets really nasty. The damage output on it is actually bonkers. So it's super cool to see experimentation there. But in general, you can choose which ones you go. I think if you're gonna do M0s or just general dungeons, people tend to go towards the Rock Dragon, Granith, to the Tempest, over to Tira and Maruk, and then over to the final boss with some options there. So let's go through it in that order, just so we kind of have some major recoveries. There's some room for flexibility on forces, but generally it's nice to be able to pick up extra forces on Granith, the Dragon, the Proto-Drake, and then the Raging Tempest. And even you can even get some on Tira and Maruk. The forces near the last boss, Balakar Khan, aren't very efficient. There's even a whole bunch of ones that have no forces attached to them at all. So getting them there can be really frustrating. You also have the double fear cast one. So when you land here in Granith, you have these here. There's 2 major mobs that you want to be kicking. The first one is this Plane Stomper here. He has a disruptive shout that is incredibly annoying. And then there's these horn guys, the Horn Sounder, that you want to CC them when they cast the horn, because it can be really disruptive as well. So you see that going off, rally the clan, you just want to CC that, prevent them from getting it off, because it can cause a lot of problems, especially on higher keys. But for the most part, you just want to go and clear out all 3 of the catapults, pull whatever forces that you want, and those are the 2 things you want to look out for, is the horn blower and the Lance Master that have the War Stomp plus the Disruptive Shout. And there's a big pat, there's actually 2 big pats on Granith that go around. You can see them right here on this screen, this one here. Some people like pulling these. It depends on if you're getting forces later or not. And sometimes these can show up. There's an inner one that circles in the middle near the boss, and there's an outer one, which is this one here, that is quite large. So you can pull this, get the extra forces, or just get through it. But just be aware that the pats are here and that most people will end up running into these and aggro them prematurely. On to Granith. Super straightforward fight. 2 major things to worry about. He does constant AoE, it's just as a basis, but then he will spawn these ads. These ads will appear on some side. If you have bigwigs or the weak auras, it'll tell you what directions come from. These are CCable. What they'll do is they'll spawn on the opposite side of one of the catapults, run towards the catapult, and when they get to it, they will break it, so you can't use it. And it's very important for the next part. So you need to be CCing these ads and killing them, because periodically throughout the fight, he will do a cast called Eruption, which if you have good meters, you see it's going here, and you can just use the catapults to stun him. One thing that I see people not knowing a lot, in fact, rarely people realize this, you can stun him during the cast of Eruption. As soon as he starts the cast of Eruption, you can immediately cast the catapult, stun him. He won't cast it again if he gets interrupted. Eruption is a big pulsing damage. It does like 50% of everyone's health every pulse. On higher keys, it does like 80% or 90%. So if you get 2 pulses, you're going to die. So you need to hit the catapult, and you can do it right as he starts Eruption, so he never gets any pulses off. Just keep that in mind. So there you go. That's kind of the core mechanic of him. He has an AoE you can avoid. He does have a one you can't avoid, so healers just need to heal through it. but you do need to make sure you stop the eruption, preferably before you even get any ticks off. And you won't be able to use the catapult if the saboteurs get there. So CC them, stun them, whatever you're gonna do, make sure they don't make it. Another boss is the Raging Tempest, which is this one here. I think in most routes on M+, you'll do this one first, just so you can lust on this one. And there's these totems you need to go around and clear. There's a couple mobs in here that are really nasty. You want to land on the totem, kill the mobs around it. The big ones you want to be looking out for are the storm elementals that cast a spell called Tempest. You see it right there. This ability right here, this Tempest, if you see it casting, is one of the scariest abilities in this entire dungeon. So it does damage at pulse, and then it stacks a horrifying dot on the whole party that will kill everyone if you don't kick it. Make sure you kick Tempest. You can actually kick it before he even gets one stack off. So it's super important that you kick that. If you get 2 or 3 stacks on high keys, it can just be death because it just hits so dang hard. Plus the mobs there are always doing damage no matter what. Especially on this week particularly, which is Fortified and Raging, which can make it significantly harder and hit much harder as well. So just make sure you're always kicking that as soon as it shows up. If you're DPS or tank, or if you're a healer that has an interrupt, make sure you're using it. Right next to the boss, there are 2 big pats that you will want to pull. Some people don't pull the thunder lizards in the back, that pack, and just avoid it. It's really hard for pugs. So if you have a core group, you may be able to skip it. These mobs right here can be mass dispelled, or purged. If you have a shaman, if you have a priest, you can just kill these off instantaneously without having to worry. And then you have this pack over here. For this one, the mob riding the thunder lizard, kick Thunderstrike. Ignore all his other spells. Thunderstrike's the big one. If he gets Thunderstrike off, it hurts really bad. And then kill the storm shields that are next to him. But if you're gonna pull this pack, because your group just wants to get rid of it, Thunderstrike is the one you want. Make sure that doesn't go off, because that will kill people. On to the Raging Tempest. This boss can be as easy or as hard as you make it. This mistake I see people making the most is that orbs should never reach the boss. Every time he absorbs an orb, he will get increased damage, and it will stack to the point where when he does his AoE pulse, everyone dies. So you want to be grabbing these orbs. You're incentivized to do so because every orb you grab will increase your damage and healing. It'll do a little damage to you when you grab it, but it's better than the boss getting it. And as long as your healer can handle it, grab as many orbs as you can and make sure the boss doesn't get any. You can grab them manually, or you can also get he'll get these lightning strikes on everyone. These lightning strikes will destroy the orbs. So once you have that, just make sure you hit as many as you can so that you don't end up getting any on the boss. The other thing is that the tank needs to be, these are the strikes that will remove the orbs. The tank needs to be in melee range at all times. If at any point the tank steps away from the boss, they'll start pummeling the tank really hard and eventually kill him. So just make sure the tank is always in melee range. So the tank will not be running out to grab orbs. They'll just stay near the boss and circle around and grab them like Pong. Just if they show up, grab them there. So those are the 2 big things for this boss. And then you're just going through, collecting orbs, destroying orbs if you can't get all of them, because they do damage. During the storm, your healer just needs to get through all the damage that comes out of it, and then that's it. That's the whole fight. Next is Tira and Maruk and the area around it. This one has a couple annoying mechanics as well. So you'll have to clear out these necromancer packs on each of the hills. They'll be marked on your map before the boss will actually trigger and spawn. There are some major AoEs here. Death Bolt Volley needs to be kicked, interrupted, so that you don't end up getting a whole bunch of AoE damage. There's also these ground AoEs, these swirls that show up. But there's the big one here, and then there's smaller ones with orbs. Both of them hit really hard. The orbs hit really hard, so you just make sure you don't get hit by those. Watch your feet. And then there's one extra mechanic. One of the mobs will steal your soul. You can actually see it right here. So if I go back, they'll target a person. Sometimes it goes on multiple people, but you get hit with this soul steal, collect soul. And so you'll see this little orb come up out of your body here, and then you'll see a ground target indicator that shows where it's going. And then while you have this, you're debuffed. So you want to get this off as fast as possible. Run to where the orb is, step on top of your soul, collect it, and you're good to go. Just make sure you're grabbing these. Don't stay shrunk the whole time, because you're losing effectiveness by keeping that debuff on you. And once you've cleared all the packs, these 2 bosses will spawn. They'll do a little animation. Don't stand in the AoE that they're pulsing before their animation finishes. And then you have these 2 bosses. The first thing to think about is Ancestral Bond. This pops up if they're too far apart, and they will try to separate themselves often. The tank needs to get aggro on both of them and then bring them together. Usually everyone just focuses on the caster, the one with the bow, so that you just run towards it, the other one comes together and finishes it. There's an AoE fear, avoid that, obviously, and then just stay on the main boss. Occasionally, the caster will shoot out this whirlwind, this one, Gale Arrow, just spread out, because what happens is, you can see me going bear form here, it'll hit the target that they're aimed at, and it hits, I think, all 4, or maybe 3 at a time. It'll do damage to that target, and it'll spawn a whole bunch of tornadoes that shoot out in 4 directions. And if you're all next to each other, you can easily get one shot by taking too many of these to the face. So usually it's better just spread out, get some distance, let the tornadoes spread out, then come back in. You know, if you're melee, maybe try to find a little pocket to step away and come back in. Periodically, the archer will jump away. Everyone just needs to follow, keep them together so Ancestral Bond doesn't trigger, and then you're back on it. Then at some point, you'll get this big wind rush from the caster, Tira, and then at the same time, so here's the winds, the Earth Splitter will happen as well. So you'll get this Earth Splitter, this V formation of ground swirlies from Maruk, and then you'll be able to see Tira casting something, which is this wind effect. It's interruptible, so just when you see her jump away and you see Earth Splitter start casting, you see Repel. Make sure when Repel starts and then Guardian Wind triggers, kick that, interrupt it, then stand on her so he comes to fight. There's these ground patches afterwards that you just have to get out of. And that's basically the whole fight. Next is the final area with Balakar Khan. When you get near his area, you will get this debuff on you that warns you that you're about to be knocked out of the sky. So there's a couple options for you here as you come into it. You can either go, so like right here, let me see if I can show you. So you have 2 route options here. Most people will go in through the front as an option, but there is a secondary path on the side here. It has more of the fear mobs, but less mobs overall. So if you have good interrupts or multiple melee interrupts, you might want to go down the side path. And then there are also some skips here in the front, which depends on what route you take. Some people will pull extra on these 3 bosses so that they have forces, and then they skip most of the mobs around Balor Khan just because they're kind of nasty. So as you get closer, you'll get this debuff that warns you you're about to get knocked out of the sky. So when you get that debuff, make sure you get low to the ground so you don't take fall damage. There's Stormcaller's Fury. So you want to kind of get low to the ground so you don't get knocked down. And then you'll come across, if you're taking the front entrance here, you have either you're going to be killing mobs in the front if you need forces, or you're going to be going to the left and going over the fence, or to the right and going over the fence. The reason being is these defenders in the middle have high HP. I think they're only worth 1.5% each, and they have this big AoE fear cast, which is it's a 6-second fear. So you just have to have really good interrupts here. If you have auto marker like I do, mark them and make sure people are kicking them properly. The War Stomp is quite annoying as well, but you'll just kind of be dealing with it that way and then kicking, and just make sure you have the forces that you need. Blood Curdling Shout is the one you want to be kicking there. Then you'll come across Batak and Balara. Batak, which is the one with the, if you look at the hats, he's the one on the right that has this little like Roman hat on it. He's the one that you want to focus on because he's the one that will also do the Blood Curdling Shout, which is the AoE fear. The other guy, Balara, just runs around and derps himself. So focus on burning down Batak first. He's the one that has the fear. Make sure you focus your interrupts on him. So you make sure you take it down, and then you're ready for the final boss. And the final boss is actually wickedly simple. There's just one really tricky part that comes out of it. You'll trigger him, and he'll have these 4 mobs that are channeling, which will come active when he hits 50%. So you'll deal damage to him in the meantime. He has these occasional points where he'll throw a spear, avoid it, and then later on in the fight, he'll do a Thunder Spear, which sucks everyone in, does damage, and then he'll charge through it. So the Iron Stampede there. So you just got to be aware of it. It's not anything you haven't seen before. The big thing happens at 50%. He'll go to the middle, take his place in the middle here, and then he'll activate all of these mobs that will then just need to be picked up by the tank, and they'll all cast a spell called Stormbolt, which is on high keys, especially on tyrannical weeks. It does serious damage. So you want to be interrupting these as much as you can. Use self-defensives, whatever you need to survive it. Make sure you bring them all in, AoE them down, get back on the boss, and that's pretty much it. Just avoid the Thunder Spear, avoid the charges, and just make sure you deal with the ads properly with as many interrupts as you possibly can. And that's the whole dungeon. It's fun. I like it a lot. It can really be really tough in certain points if certain mechanics are skipped, which is why I wanted to make the video. So if you like the video, leave a like down below. If there's other dungeons you want me to cover or other parts of the game you'd like for me to cover, let me know in the comments as well. Or stop by my live stream since I'm live every day. Twitch.tv/Drybear. See you there. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.